Good evening. Welcome to the City of Hudson's Plan Commission meeting, dated April 24th, 2018. We will do call to order. Number 2, in discussion possible action on March 27, 2018 meeting minutes.
I'll make a motion to approve.
I'll second.
Any discussion or changes? Seeing none, all in favor? Aye. All opposed? Motion carries. Number 3, under new business. Public hearing on an application for conditional use permit, CUP, for 708 offices, 708 2nd Street, Frise Properties, LLC. So I will open it up for the public at this time. Anybody here for the public? Want to say anything? Art, please, if you do.
I know nothing about it. I didn't see anything to read about it. I thought there'd be a presentation and then I'd be able to understand it. So I'm concerned about things, but I don't have any details.
Okay. If you do, we'll get to the podium. We want to state your name and address for the record.
Excuse me.
Got to do the technical stuff, Art.
I agree. Hi, Art Doyle from Art Doyle Spokes and Pedals, building owner, 607 2nd Street. I am curious about what's going on, but I didn't see any published details, so I thought tonight I'd hear about the details and then make comments.
All right.
So I withhold my comments till I'd learn more.
Sounds good.
Thank you for asking me, though.
Anybody else from the public?
Anybody else from the public? Yes, sir.
There'll be another chance to talk.
Yeah.
I'm Mike Lesher, on the building at 700 2nd Street. Same concerns as Art, just want to see what's going on.
All right, thank you. Any other further discussion from the public? Any other from the public?
Maybe.
You can wait. Anything else from the public?
I do want to note that we did receive one letter. You guys should have got it in your packets. That was from Karen Nessett and David Estreen, and they are residents at 727 3rd Street. So you should have all gotten that in your packets.
All right, seeing no other public.
I move that the public hearing be closed. I'll second.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? B, discussion possible action on an application for a conditional use permit, CUP, for the 708 office, 708 2nd Street, Frise Properties, LLC. Now, Dennis, if you would like to go through the project.
I'm Dennis Kroll, 720 1st Street, Hudson, and the architect. Let me just walk you through this real quick.
Do the executive summary, and if Art and others have other
Really, we're to consolidate some of their operations. Saranda and Frise Properties are proposing to make 2 levels of office space above underground parking space. Underground parking, and there's a partial level above on the roof for exercise and quiet away kind of space. It's a conservatory, actually. The building will be fully accessible and sprinklered. It'll be we're emphasizing sustainable design strategies for this. Energy efficiency, renewable and recyclable material use, indoor air quality, daylighting, and HVAC systems will be highly controllable by the employees. Low maintenance, low carbon kind of materials for the exterior, fiber cement, and metal panels for the vertical elements. It's about 3,700 square feet per floor, with a little bit more on the lower level of 4,200, I think, something like that. 4,290. That is.
Dennis, just to clarify, I know you want to talk to Art, but we are the committee you want to talk to.
Thank you.
Like, please share the information. It's a weird spot.
Public, please.
Okay, I'll try that. There's 14 13 parking spaces, rather. We,
Look at that.
Well, you can look at
thank
them.
you.
Sure.
Thank you. By the way, thanks, guys, for being, for volunteering, doing your job here. Parking, we're proposing 13 parking spaces, 8 in the garage and 5 out in the back. And accessible parking spaces would be in the back. We're proposing that all deliveries, UPS, FedEx, and USPS come from the front, and it's a very small operation, actually. Nothing that doesn't come to my place, actually. There will be significant planting on the site, and the rainwater, stormwater systems will be well taken special care of. We're using we're using stormwater, a lot of retainage and infiltration in the stormwater system. Roger will fill in any details if we get to that point.
Roger, do you want to go through design details for the audience?
Yeah, I guess first off, this is a pretty similar project that we did for Dennis about a block away. If you go west 1 block on, what was that, 702 First Street? 720? And similar in massing, if in that type of thing. But in general, the stormwater comes from the east down the hill to the west and comes out basically kind of over the retaining wall. And so we're capturing much of that into rain gardens, permeable pavers. We're kind of doing, everything we can for the surrounding area. We're, in our opinion, it's there's less water leaving the site than what is there now. And talking with staff and working through staff, we're not aware of any drainage issues downstream on the street on the corner of Vine. That's where the nearest storm sewer is. Everything seems to be okay. The sewer and water laterals to the building is off of 2nd Street, and that's a pretty old system. And so we're going to do some televising of the main and just kind of making sure our connections are good. Hopefully we don't have to go all the way into the street, but we're going to try to limit that as much as possible. Such an old main and sewer line, we just don't know what we're going to kind of come across. But that's the plan. There's an underground garage. Access is off of 2nd Street. There's going to be parking in the back on the alley. We've really worked closely with city staff, SEH, and trying to address all those comments. And that process, I thought, went very well. And as far as the conditions that we see on the staff report, I don't think we have any issues with any of that. And happy to answer any questions.
Commissioners, Mike?
One thing I think maybe we start, just looking at the staff report and some of the criteria that we establish for how we make a decision on conditional use permits. So I listed them all out, and then I also put a little bit of a narrative on how it pertains to this specific application. It's also important, I think, for everybody to take a look at, we printed off some recent case law in the state of Wisconsin that relates to conditional use permits. And the thing that the commission and the Common Council will need to consider specifically is that any conditions that are placed on a conditional use permit need to be reasonable and measurable. So there was a case where effectively there was a number of conditions on an application that a county put in place, and then also they denied the application after public testimony. While the court upheld the county's denial of the permit, but then the legislature got involved and said, no, municipalities, you need to be you need to have a specific criteria. So they created the state statute that puts into place that reasonable and measurable criteria for review. So that in mind, you know, with the B4 district that was established, we created those criteria, which again, I think are reasonable and measurable. But I think as we ask questions and as we move forward with this, it might be just easiest to kind of go down that line of conditions and things that we should be considering, and then come to some sort of recommendation based on our findings after we walk through those.
Mary Claire.
Yep, go ahead.
So you want to go point by point, A, B, all through?
I think it's probably the most organized, reasonable way to approach it. Yeah.
Okay. Does the public have any questions right now before we start going into that? Go ahead, Art, to the podium, please.
There's no additional street parking required for this? It's self-contained for all the parking for this project? Yes, no?
No.
No.
So it'll be taking up more street parking?
Yes.
Okay, how many more street spots will be actually attributed to this building?
We're trying to figure that out.
Okay,
Yep,
great.
that's item E on the list of items. No, it's okay. It's okay.
Item E, yeah.
Yep.
All right, so it's going to be addressed?
Yep.
All right.
We're gonna have that discussion.
And then currently this building, which looks very nice, and I like the fact that it's, you know, modern design and all that, it's zoned for this property?
The rezoning and comprehensive land use plan amendment took place in fall of 2017.
Okay, so it's now commercial business property?
Yep, downtown business. Yep,
B4, though, it's a
B4.
new designation.
Yeah,
Yep.
Okay.
I just pay gentle attention.
Okay.
Okay.
Yep.
All right, that's all I got right now. Thank you.
Thanks, Art.
So again, Mike Lesher, I own 700 2nd Street. So this is going to be immediately adjacent to 700 2nd Street on that vacant lot?
Correct, yes.
So I guess then I'm very concerned about the engineering aspects of it. We have a cinder block retaining wall for the north wall of our building. I'm very concerned about how this is going to be accomplished, the excavation. Where are you at as far as soil testing?
Soil testing will start this week, as far as I know. And we're very concerned about that too. So that was the next step, is to talk with you and see what it looks like from your side, and to take some.
And we will be addressing that on the development side as well.
Okay.
Tonight.
I'm a civil engineer, so I'm going to be looking at those things very closely because I can see their potential for detrimental impacts to our building. So,
Thank you. So let's start with A, intensity of the proposed use.
So if that's, go ahead.
You know, just stating the obvious, it was previously a single-family home. Obviously, that was demolished and now is just a vacant parking lot that's used for parking for Saranda and its employees and visitors. The prior meeting, it was discussed, you know, this isn't necessarily new employees. It's reallocating or moving existing employees to this new facility. Is that?
Yeah, correct.
Right.
So does that leave vacancies in your current buildings then? If,
Our current building has
Hans, could you?
You got to come to the microphone, please.
Yeah, I'm Hans Fries, the owner of this potential building and the lot. And as far as the current situation for Saranda now, we have two buildings. Our original building is on 3rd Street and Vine, the corner building. And we have about 20 people working that building. And then we have the one across the alley that's on 2nd Street. And that has about 20 people working there. So the idea is that 20 people that currently work on Vine and 3rd, the original building, the old building, is going to move to the new building. That's the intention.
So what will that original building be used for then, or?
We don't know yet.
Oh,
you
okay.
know. Yeah. I mean, it's nothing. We don't have any plans of. First, we'll want to, make the move, and then we'll decide
Okay.
what we do with that historical, nice building that
Right.
we've been there for, since 2000.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Fred, did you have something you wanted to add?
Well, I think it came out just now. I wanted to know the capacity of the new building. I figured it had 42 workstations, and you were within 2 of what you said, how things are going to change and move around. So I guess I just want to wait as it unfolds to hear more. So, yes, it's coming out.
Okay.
So, thank you.
Any other questions on item A? Mike? No?
No, I mean,
I think we're okay there.
this is a discussion we have to have.
Okay.
Yeah.
Then let's go to B, traffic and trip generation of the proposed use.
Staff made a recommendation that at a minimum, a reasonable condition would be that no vehicle traffic associated with the business utilize the alleyway north of the subject property, where it's significantly more residential in nature. So any traffic that's generated by the business would not be, going through that residential alley to the north. I think that's a reasonable and measurable thing.
How would you control that?
It would be part of the condition on their conditional use permit, as well as a condition placed on the final development plan approval.
How would you control that?
I'm sure they would probably notify the city of the infraction.
Same thing exists where I live.
Yeah, but those people, it's a different situation. They have put a letter in, and if somebody's going to go in there, they're going to probably notify Mike.
And I don't know if there was a condition placed. I mean,
Okay.
I don't know.
I'm just trying to find out, and I'm not trying to complain, but
Yep.
I didn't think so.
that's a steep entrance into that one too, where you don't want traffic going through there. That's actually dangerous. Okay.
And we tried to address some of that with the deliveries taking place in the front.
Mike and I also met with the DOT. I don't know if we're jumping ahead, but
Nope, that's fine. That's relevant.
on what's happening in 2020, 2021 on the reconstruction of 35 or 2nd Street to us. And their concerns, I think we've addressed more so.
Yep, and that was included in that engineering memo of what, if they were going to be okay with granting that access, it had to meet the criteria.
And the
One of those
change
two.
they did in front addressed that issue for them, I believe. Yeah. Go ahead, Hans.
The nature of our business is that people come in the morning and they stay all day, and then they leave in the evening. So it's not the type of business that we have people coming and going all the time. It's not a bank. It's not, a gas station. So that concern about the traffic in the alleys, I think, is a little bit exaggerated, because I don't really feel it's going to create any nuisance to the neighbors. Most of the people that live in the neighborhood, they're gone already at 8:30, 9 a.m. Everybody vacates the area. They go to work. They go to their offices. So that's when our people come in, and then they leave at around 5. So it's not that we have traffic at night or off hours that will create any stress to the residential nature of the block. I think we already shown how we operate there. We've been very respectful, concerned with the nature of the block, of the neighborhood. We've made improvements. All improvements were taking account, aesthetically, functionally, in a way that's been sustainable. And so I think that's our style. Of course, Ciranda has no control on this building in the future. Things can change. But while we are in control of the building, we are very low-key, very, respectful group of people.
You've been a great business partner, and I won't speak for anybody else, but we have to get it right the first time for everything involved, including the back parking and traffic, and then the front traffic flow, and what projects the DOT has in front of us that we want to make sure we're doing it right. Why we're in the ground and why you're doing this construction.
And the reason for my concern is only to try to preserve the neighborhood for the remaining single-family residentials that don't want constant traffic. And so that's why the questions are being
which is not our case, we don't have
and I understand that, but that's why they're being asked.
No, it's great, it's great, because I'm also concerned with the neighborhood and the neighbors, and we want to be good neighbors.
And you have been, and
you have been.
We're conscious of that. Any further on the B, traffic?
No.
No? Okay. C, existing surrounding uses within the 300 feet.
I think I included a vicinity map in your packet, residential to the north, business to the south and east, and business to the west. So.
Any questions or concerns there? Okay.
I think we're okay. No.
D, consistency with the future land use as identified in the City of Hudson's comprehensive plan.
Again, the comprehensive plan land use plan amendment was approved in fall of 2017 along with rezoning to the B4.
Any questions or issues with that? Seeing none, we'll go to E, parking needs and availability of the parking for the property in question and neighboring properties.
And this is a big one, obviously. It's my understanding that a previous conditional use permit that was put in place limited parking to just in front of the businesses on business on 3rd Street. Right. At a minimum, that would, need to. My recommendation would need to be maintained, and then, I think you got to look ultimately too is if the business continues to grow and be successful, which I think everybody hopes it does. Where are these cars going to be parked? And understanding that the hours of operation are morning, just a standard business day, is there an opportunity for some of the employees to obtain parking permits for the lot across the street? I think that would be a logical approach to potentially doing something like that. But again, we're limited there too. We're limited everywhere. So you take from one spot and move it to another. You're not necessarily solving any problems. You're just,
moving the problem,
playing a shell game. Yeah. So I think those are all reasonable and measurable things. I think if we had a good idea of what, let's say that there's 44 seats in that office. There's 44 employees. Say there's 20 additional employees that could be housed in the existing, so you're getting up there in people. And obviously there's not a whole lot of housing, really nearby. Mm-hmm. So how are people getting to and from work? Where are they parking? And I think that's where we need to have probably some of our most involved discussions tonight.
I drove through the alley tonight and in front. And the alley and in the lot in question had 16 cars along with the garage area. That's how many were there. And then went out onto the main street and there were 9. And they went from the corner of 3rd and Vine all the way up to a Streams property line. And 3 were on the church side. Now, I don't know if they were all your employees, but that's what I saw.
I have a comment to that.
Okay.
A lot of people from other business, they park right in front our lot.
Okay.
And that's, it's very common that our employees don't always have the choice to park there. There is no signage that says this is reserved for, for this, which could be an improvement. Maybe, the City of Hudson could work into creating special zones for, residents or, places that we want to contain the parking.
I understand what you're saying.
Yeah,
yeah.
but we don't have control of, or we don't have the right to park there.
It's not all yours, yeah, it's open to everybody.
Exactly. People arrive there, already a lot of people are parked there, you know.
And I didn't, like I said, I didn't know if they were your employees. I just saw the cars were from the corner up to
Yeah,
there.
a lot of these cars are not, doesn't have to do anything with our business.
Right.
Any further discussion on, Frank?
Well, I guess the question then, when the new building opens up, you're going to move all of your employees from the other two buildings over?
No, from one building.
From one building? Okay, and then that building is going to be empty?
Well, we don't know yet. We don't have, we have not planned for what we do with the building.
So you might lease it out, or?
Yeah, lease it out, or, we don't know yet. We don't have a plan right now.
You tearing it down for parking?
Not necessarily.
Yeah, put a ramp there, that'll
No.
be attractive.
Because,
Parking ramp.
right, that would be great. But that's not, there's no CUP on that, so it could be rented out. You could be 20 more
Yeah.
cars down there.
Well, even that, or if they grow the business, which would be great, then you could have
More offices.
too.
Yeah.
So I think there were just a couple things on parking that were still needing to be addressed, Mike, according to the engineer's report.
Yep.
So,
The setback we got resolved since this memo. And then we had to have the lines in the basement were extended per the memo. Which
so no one's backing out.
The parking part of it, yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Mary Claire, is there a specific item on that list that you?
Well, I was just kind of looking on page 3 of 9. So under number 13, parking in the front exterior has been eliminated, okay. So that addresses that issue. And then number 14. So it sounds like the lining of that one addresses that issue?
Correct.
Okay. And then 15 was addressed. Okay.
Any further questions or concerns on the park?
Maybe it's a threshold, and again, it goes back to who's going to enforce it question. If we all of a sudden run into a scenario where there's 40 employees in that building, we can also make sure that we review that again in the future, and if there's an issue, address it at that time. Now, what are we going to do after a building's already there? I don't know. But it's also a reasonable condition to place on the.
So, excuse me, so Mike, if we're saying that there's no cars that will come in from the residential side, correct? So they will not go in and out of the residential?
Correct.
North of that alley of the business?
Yep.
So that addresses one of the neighboring concerns. One of the neighbors' concerns, right?
Yes. Again, how are you going to regulate it? But yeah.
Right. Well, but I mean, they want to be good neighbors. That's their goal, to be good neighbors. I'm sure if there's a lot of traffic going that way, we will hear about that, and then it'll just be addressed. I mean, the best problem to have is a parking problem in some ways, because, no, I know, but I mean, it's, I know sometimes it's a walking problem that we can't park right.
Don't even start with me on that stuff.
Very good. But I think, it is a challenge that we are not addressing
Parking
until,
problems are parking problems.
yes,
So I won't get up and talk about that. So they're problems.
Say
agreed,
specific to this project's
Right.
parking issues.
right,
It
agreed,
ripples into the whole downtown.
right.
Art can depend on all employees park in the parking lot and bike to work.
Good luck.
Can I make a comment here?
Yeah.
The one concern that's obviously come out of here is that, we see what you're doing, and with the other building, say, being vacant, is there a day coming that we just don't know about yet where your business will have 60 employees. Now are you saying they're all going to be in this one building and all that, and then you're going to come right back into this building that you're vacating? I guess that's the question I have before me right now. I mean, unless you sell it or get rid of it or change use of it, I mean, that potential exists. That if your business is successful and you grow and you need to add employees, boom, you got the space for it, and then we need the parking.
Right now, there are employees that are off-site that will come onto the site too, in other buildings around. So it's consolidation.
Well, but my point is that at some point, then that adds up to 60 parking places.
Yeah. Density is the density is necessary. It's important for the vitality of the downtown. And I guess when we talked last fall, everybody decided that, yeah, they should be allowed to increase the density or around that B3 area to the surrounding area. The problem is parking right now, and if people don't park in the parking lot across the way, or if it stays a parking lot, people don't park there, why are they not parking there?
Frank?
If people do complain about, if neighbors do complain about people parking 3 blocks in for various activities, whether it's restaurants or working, then you start to have to do things like resident parking permit areas that will force people to park in those in the ramps or in the lot. You pay for it with the new funds that are generated from that. I think.
Do you have a question, Frank? Or concern?
No, it goes back to what Fred said, and that is that, and then you mentioned that not all those employees are in your existing buildings downtown right now. Some of them will be coming in from off-site areas.
Mm-hmm. I don't understand.
Well, across the way, you have some rented out, some other leased office.
We lease some space on Second and across the library, the building.
That are already downtown parking.
They're already downtown, yeah.
Germane to the conversation, the city is attempting to address the issue of parking. It's not going to happen overnight.
Yeah.
But do we make a decision on the future of what's going to happen with his business, knowing we are addressing the parking situation?
But I have a question for all of us. I think Dennis, had an interesting proposal. If we create resident parking spaces, at City of Hudson, so every resident will have a right, because I think the concern that I see are with people saying, well, these people are parking in front of my lot, right? So they don't want people parking in front of their lots because they want to make sure there is enough parking there for their own needs. Why don't we create in Hudson a resident parking, spaces?
Mm-hmm.
This way, a person has like some receipt from the city, a blue or whatever, label put in the, which in the, inside the car. So there is obvious this person has the right to park in the space.
That's a complicated issue, and it's not as easy as you're suggesting to address, because there are many different facets to try and tell a resident which they built and pay for a road already that they now have to pay or get a permit to park on the road. Well,
but the road is owned by the city, right?
They're correct. It's a
public access. we all pay for the road. So it's a public area.
Correct.
So we cannot really rule over as a private person. We cannot rule over public.
Correct.
So in this case, how can residents have control over the parking? I mean, they can make a recommendation to the city.
Well, they call and complain, and the person gets a ticket or towed away. That's how it's enforced.
Okay, yeah.
So what's the first strategy the city's working on to address parking?
Purchasing land, and we are also addressing the parking metering system and the rates and the fine bond schedule.
What is the target for the number of spaces they want to provide based on what we think we need today, and if we continue to grow and say 2 years from now we need another 100 or 200 spots?
What's that report?
Are they anticipating that in those actions and
Yes.
moves?
And we actually added, what, 49? With the painting line?
They did the study. Yeah, so
How long ago was that?
Last fall
Oh, okay.
on First Street.
we'll have, it's you can't do everything all at once, obviously.
Right.
So, right now the discussion is the pay stations, because we realize that a large number of our meters don't work or aren't even there anymore.
Which aren't generating the money to buy the
Help
land.
us support, whether we do another surface lot, whether it's a ramp. It's just one thing at a time, and it's going to take us time to get through it.
Another piece of that puzzle, not to get off, is this building over here. What we do with this building once we decide for sure moving the fire department. But anyways, we're getting off topic here. But so what I'm suggesting is that the city is addressing the parking needs to try to alleviate. And in my mind, it's not fair for us to condemn a project. I'm not saying that's what we're doing.
I'm not doing that.
I'm not saying that's what we're doing, but we are trying to address the issue, so hopefully the growth of his company does proceed forward, and
Without
as
issue.
at a parallel line of us addressing our parking issues.
Right on. Right on.
Would it be a reasonable request to just review it again in 12 months, or to see after we do that first step with the pay stations, which is supposedly happening this summer, and then revisit it again? And if we have issues, again, the buildings would be there in that in that scenario, but maybe we can figure out a way to shuffle the deck.
I would suggest that, yes, and I would say yearly until the parking situation resolves itself, which I don't see that happening over a period of time. So this is going to have to be looked at for a long time, constantly.
I would change your resolve to relieve, because it's impossible without that.
I understand.
Tons of money.
Yeah, no, I understand.
Are we really going to know anything in a year?
We'll know now that we have. We'll know how the circulation happens with having the pay stations in place.
Okay.
But I just meant monitor it and watch it.
Absolutely, I agree with it.
I'm fine.
I guess I question in a year, reviewing it, once we approve it and they move in.
Then that was my point. The building's there.
Right.
And as good neighbors, he's gonna have you'll have 3 buildings down there in a sense.
Yep.
You may have to also address the parking issue along with yourself. And whether that is tearing down a building or whatever you need to
Or
do.
shuffling.
Buying another one. Buy Ethel cuttybacks or something.
And maybe you get to that point, that's great, the business is a success, but we'll have to do our part.
We're not saying this stuff to hold it over your head. That's not why we're saying this.
I mean, in my opinion, as a resident of Hudson, the issue of the parking got aggravated with the number of restaurants that came to downtown. We love the restaurants, we love to support them, and they are welcome. But they are definitely, since they start, happening, that's really what's created a lot of pressure on the parking. And you probably Art can address that. Because he's next to one restaurant that takes a lot of
2
customers.
20 restaurants. So yeah, parking is very challenging. And
So it's not business like
it's
ours.
not a parking issue tonight, other than how much parking
Right.
you guys, and it's nothing with you, it's just parking does count, and it's not simple, it is important. In my business, as long as we're chatting, is feeling huge pressure from the lack of parking. It's a conversation, every person that comes in my building. Am I concerned about my shop starting to appreciate because of parking? I'm scared to death of it. It haunts me daily. things are going well. People are parking 4 blocks away, 3 blocks away, so parking is a big deal in downtown, so, sorry.
Yeah, and people have to learn
No, it is.
how to park up, far away and walk to a few blocks, There's nothing wrong with that. It's healthy.
You want to be the professor to teach them, John? I've long said that. Mary Claire said it. Do we have a walking problem? Yeah.
I'd be glad to go for a tour on Sunday, Saturday afternoons, or weekday afternoons for the evening, and I want to be pointed at all these parking spots that you can walk through.
Yeah.
Because we look around, my customers look around, and they're parking 3 or 4 blocks away, dragging bikes down to my shop.
Yeah.
They're, at some point in time, it's Stillwater before, where residents don't come to downtown anymore because of it. And if that's the way the town wants to evolve, it's beyond my control, but it affects my shop and other small shops more so. If I'm missing 2 parking spots, that's a big deal. If a big restaurant misses 2 parking spots, they barely notice it. So it's a big deal, but I didn't come here to...
Right. No, I appreciate the candor, and we'll move on, but...
Well, let me add one thing that the good thing about office workers and restaurant workers, the parking is complimentary, or they use it at different times. Restaurant workers restaurant goers eat it in the evening or go out at night, and then the office workers are there during the day.
So, okay, let's get...
Excuse me,
Moving here.
Yeah.
Chair.
What? Mary Claire.
Go ahead. I mean, I think the point.
Art.
Art?
I know, but we're trying to conduct a meeting as well.
But I mean, I think the point that we want to make that, I think this body, along with the Common Council, knows how important parking is to the vitality of every business that's in town, small businesses, restaurants, retail, all of them. So, I just want that to be clear, that we know that that is an issue. Whenever we look at potential new business, relocation or something, parking is probably 80% of our conversation. No. Then really kind of what does the building look like? So I just want that to be clear that.
I believe you.
Okay.
I guess the point might, maybe the issue with the item, or I'd like to discuss, would be the possibility that if we're going to review it in a year, is that in the process with the conditional use permit, in reviewing it, if we're operating as we are now, which is tight but no worse, where we don't have 60 employees or whatever. We want you to have as many as you can grow to. At that point, when we review it, is there a possibility as part of the conditional use permit that we come up with a solution for, maybe it's shuttling the additional employees in beyond what we have now? I don't know what the answer is, other than you're right. Once we approve it, it's there.
But we have to approve the use of the existing building when they go to do something there.
Correct.
And that's our hammer, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
Except the existing building probably is not conditional use.
Well then.
Which one?
Maybe it gets attached.
The original building.
There's a condition of this permit,
Yeah. So if that has to come back for approval, we have some control that way.
And we can pull these for review at any point that the Common Council or Plan Commission deems appropriate.
Mm-hmm.
Let's keep moving.
So hearing that, then we have our concerns are addressed.
That we are putting in a conditional use of reviewing the parking every year. Is that what you
Annually.
said? Annually.
That would be, if that's
Annually is better because you can move it around then if you have to.
Yeah.
And again, I think the other conditions, no employee parking north of that property line on 3rd Street, and no vehicle deliveries or departures in the alleyway north of the property line.
Okay.
And those details will be included in the minutes, correct?
Yeah, I'm ready.
Nice job. Nice job, Emily.
Next.
F, signage size and location for the proposed use. Really don't have any
We don't have a
signage.
sign plan yet. I don't anticipate there being.
We don't.
You never have had one. Are you going to put one?
We don't have.
G, exterior lighting for the proposed use.
We'll need a basic photometric plan. It's my understanding that there's just 2 exterior lights on the facility.
I made a statement earlier that there will be 3 exterior lights, and they'll be downward pointed or recessed lighting, and they'll have horizontal or cutoffs. We don't know what the animal is yet, but they're going to be quite a bit lower than the ordinance requires. There's no desire to put a lot of light on the outside.
You'll work that out, though, right?
No, just 2 in the front and 1 in the rear
Work
of the
that
building.
out. Yeah, that's not a problem.
Under the canopies.
H, the noise to potentially be generated by the proposed use. I don't think there's going to be any noise.
No noise.
I, proposed use shall be compliant with section 255-76 under the conditional use permits.
It's the same criteria, pretty much, that we pulled straight out.
So any questions or concerns on the conditional use permit for the 708 office building? And we are looking for a motion.
I will so move to approve the application for conditional use permit for the property. It's, 708 offices as it's described, 708 Second Street, for the Freeze properties with any stipulations that might have.
On the conditional use stipulation.
The ones that were stated earlier.
Yes, sir.
Is there a second? Any further discussion on the conditional use permit? Make it clear that it's the conditional use permit. Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes. Right next to that is number C, discussion possible action on the final development plans and downtown overlay district design review for 708 offices, 708 Second Street and the Freeze Property LLC. Mike.
Well, this one's got a laundry list of things. I think what I might start with, because we discussed a lot of the other items already, is the retaining wall issue. If you look at SCH's memo dated April 18th, discusses that very issue. Also listed as a condition. It is towards the end.
Is it on the?
It's on page 8 of 9. Additional detail is required for the proposed retaining walls. At a minimum, the submittal should be revised to respond to those criteria. What portions of the existing retaining walls will be removed and how much will remain. The addition of the removals plan sheet to the civil plans would help clarify the extent of the removals. How does the 3-tier retaining wall on the south side of the property tie into the existing building to the south? The drawings appear to show the walls terminating at the property line, leaving a gap to the dental office building. What type of retaining wall reinforcement is required? How far back would so a number of criteria. Then we keep going into engineered drawings for that wall design. They'd have to obtain construction easements or access agreements if they're going to be tying into a neighboring property's retaining wall. And then the other one was making sure that they communicated with their neighbor to ensure that was addressed. The other piece is that they have addressed the setback of the parking to that north property line needs to be at least 5 feet. They've accomplished that. What they would need to do on the south property, understanding if they own it currently, will have to have an easement agreement with that property, even though it'll be with themselves, just that all areas and assigns are part of that, so that that parking can be shared with the property to the south. The parking stalls in the garage were adjusted to be 20 feet in depth, consistent with code. It is tight, but again, we don't address parking space volume. We address parking space just length by width, not by height. One of the other main concerns from the initial concept was the roof and whether there could be a roof patio. B4 does not allow for patios on the roof, so a requirement would be that access to the roof would be only for emergency, in the event of an emergency, or for regular maintenance type issues.
Well, why can't you have a patio on the roof?
It's not allowed. B4's rooftop patio isn't allowed.
Because it was
Can't we give them
restaurant-based.
additional?
That would be a variance.
That was for restaurants, so we didn't have restaurants having loud music and stuff like that up there, but for an office.
That was
Well, and I think that
when we
No
discussed
offense,
it,
I'm not
that's
trying
what
to
it
add
was.
stuff to your building.
Oh, that was the context of it,
Or
yes.
allow it to you guys, but
And the
it's
restaurant would
just
be a little louder.
And I think that was the point with having it be not B3 but B4. You're transitioning to the residential use. Do you want? That was the concern of people peering over
I understand.
at you. I think that was the impetus for that
Oh.
Frank,
requirement.
did you have something?
That's a good point.
Yeah. It can be done with a variance. If somebody wants to do it, you can get a variance to do it, and
Correct.
it makes sense in that particular situation, you grant the variance.
Right.
Yeah.
So are you saying, Mike, that all these issues can be worked out and they're the unresolved ones, and if we go ahead tonight, this can all be done, but we should make it a condition of the motion?
All those conditions included in the staff report, as well as the signed parking easement agreement with the property to the south, which he currently owns. But obviously the detail on those retaining walls, we've got to get that. That's a significant concern, making sure that if that is done, I think that speaks to your point, that has to be done correctly, because those walls, especially as you run north on Second, aren't in the best state of repair. So when we're doing that type of work, again, the structural engineer is going to have to take a close look at it and certify that. And working with your neighbors to ensure that everybody's personal property is protected.
Do we need to wait because of that and waiting to get an end result before we?
You're certainly you can postpone if you'd like. I don't think it's an unreasonable request if that's a major concern.
What's the time frame? You have soil borings this weekend, you said? Soil borings?
This week. I'm not sure if it's going to be this week or the beginning of next week now, but we're moving along, and that kind of thing is done all the time. It's really detail stuff, and we have the engineering. We're going to do the engineering, and we're and there's a lot of liability involved, and you don't want to go there.
So Dennis, what if the other half of that wall falls?
It wants to be revealed. Pardon?
What if the other half of that wall falls while you guys are building it?
It won't.
Well,
Can't say that.
Oh, I can.
I'd like to just weigh in a little bit.
Sure.
Here, is that part of the process of architecture and then the engineering and all that is we go from concept or schematic design to design development, which is where we're at, and then we get into this construction phase. And generally speaking, the first two phases, there's an architect, there's a civil engineer, and we go hand to hand to figure all these things out, and we get the issues, and we get the soils report. The mechanical guys, the structural engineering guys, all those guys kind of come in at the design development phase. That's a little, because then we have everything else tightened up. We're very aware of the wall. I brought it to Dennis' attention. We've talked about it. It does need a structural engineer to certify basically that it's sound. He may very well be on site for the course of construction, and your engineers and the staff are going to review those documents to basically verify what that is. I'm very interested in talking to this gentleman because I think from that standpoint, it appears to me that it's a masonry wall that their building was built basically up against. And it's my thought through this process that we leave the wall alone and not touch what we were talking about, maybe removing parts of it, doing something like that, but I just don't think that's the right approach. What we're really doing is proposing to build something adjacent, paralleling that wall ultimately. And so having the structural engineer, the soils, those guys, I've seen them do amazing things. They know how to calculate soil pressure. They know how to calculate existing pressure, proposed pressure, negative pressure once it's removed, all the things that kind of go into understanding the aspects of what's going on there. And I agree that the owners should have a conversation and just get to know each other, get comfortable with that aspect. But I think the design of that is very technical and becomes kind of a standalone aspect. It's generally not something that comes up between a political body to say, do we like this or don't like this. It's really a pretty much black and white document, and I think it's fair to say that the adjacent owner should have access to that to be able to look at it. And it sounds like he's an engineer and probably likely to understand what's in there, but that's the process typically.
I've dealt with
things goes.
I've dealt with this many times where we're going up against construction that's already in existence, and what happens is you dig carefully until you find where the bottom is of this particular wall or their foundation. But I mean, this is all after talking to them, of course, and making agreements with them on letting them know what we're doing. We want to be careful, very careful though, and when you find out what's needed, then you address that with some engineering. And if it needs to be underpinned, you do that. And
sure. Mary Claire, did you have a question?
Short.
Just for clarity, so point number 3 about that the rooftop should not be open for common use or patio use, but just to clarify on their designs, it is showing all of that. So that's going to change in the design if it's not open for...
At this point, it would have to for a request of variance because it doesn't fit into the B4 zone, right. So it would be excluded.
Okay.
Correct?
And it does. I mean, it has a green roof, and it has the stairs has to have a point of egress. You have to have some sort of emergency exit. And
yes,
the state will review the plans too.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, prior to the issuance of the actual building permit. So.
And item number 7, that works for you?
What's that?
Item number 7.
I'm gonna have to.
It's that a permanent bumper curb be provided as per code no less than 5 feet from the side property line, and the plan shall include curb and gutter details.
So that's okay?
We're using the curb and gutter to hold in the permeable pavers.
Right.
So we need some hard surface to do that, so it makes a lot of sense.
Okay.
And then, the other point of the other condition number 8, that all those items in that memo and these have to be addressed satisfactorily prior to the approval of Common Council. I think that was a big thing. There was a lot still that needed to be fleshed out a little bit more. But that list is shrunk considerably.
So the recommendation of staff is?
So what do you want from us now? A motion to approve along with staff recommendations?
Yeah, if they're able to accommodate all those,
all those conditions.
And Roger's shaking his head yes.
So with the 10 points and those items outlined on the April 18th memo.
Yep, and then obviously we also have the temporary construction easements that would have to be reviewed and approved. prior to any issuance of a building permit, because we have concerns, the city, it's an alley. You know, if they're gonna tear it up, or if it gets tore up during the construction, then not only that, where is the construction staging gonna take place? All of that has to be reviewed by the city and approved, so.
That's typical in a pre-construction.
Oh, absolutely.
Right, yeah, yeah.
No, and it'll be more than, you know, it'll be a pre-construction document, we'll record it.
Sure.
So
Sure.
it'll be a legally binding document.
So is your question a motion?
I guess it was a motion.
And I'll second it, again incorporating all the stipulations on Mike's sheet, to-do list, I'll call it,
With the shared parking easement agreement with the property. to
with
the south.
everything,
All of it.
I added
everything.
that after.
Okay. Any discussion on that? Questions or concerns?
When are you anticipating that it would go to the city, the common council?
I,
All these open items.
I don't think that we probably wouldn't be able to make the next meeting with the soil borings and the engineer and working with the neighbor to get that figured out.
We'll have the soil borings, but
June.
I think that's a detail, isn't it? That can be,
I think it's
I mean,
significant.
it's going to be addressed.
I agree,
you know.
but I think it's a significant detail that we should.
We're asking that this be resolved before.
Oh, sure.
That's the motion.
Yeah, before the
That all
council.
these-
Before
all
the
these
city
conditions
council.
be
Oh, yeah,
resolved
yeah.
before,
Yeah.
Before common council.
Oh, yeah, you
says
can do that.
Go.
Yeah.
then get it done, yeah.
Yeah.
Can I ask for a clarification? So the stipulations would have to be taken care of before it goes to the common council for?
Correct.
Correct.
Thank you.
Right.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Seeing none, motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
May I ask just some general questions?
Briefly, I'll take
They'll be
that.
very brief.
If you want to come to the podium quick so we can move on with our agenda item.
It seems like there's an awful lot of details available that everybody's looking at, sets of plans, engineers' reports. I would like to see some of that information to know what the scope of what's being done, probably 5 feet from my building. So,
What we just approved is they have to come to resolution with that with you before it
Okay.
goes any further.
okay.
And that material can be had at
Yep.
Yeah. It,
his office.
And I'll give you a copy of it.
what website?
Oh, I'll show you.
The city's.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It might be just easier, sir, to come to the community
I can-
development, and
we can
he'll
go
give you a
through
copy of it.
Okay.
Okay? Thank you, guys. Sit down.
I'm just really surprised to come to this meeting and see the scope of the project, the amount of work that's been into it already, and not work one to an abutting property. And I know you're in planning.
Okay, we're moving on. Thank you. D, discussion possible action on the concept development plans for Neo Electrical Facility, 2180 Jack Road Drive, Neo Electric Solutions. Mike,
Tyler, you want to go ahead? Us as we're doing presentations, go
do
ahead.
you have a presentation for us?
He sure does.
I don't have anything to formally present.
Tell those guys to take the
Absolutely.
conversation out of here.
Well, if he's.
Roger, will you take the conversation out in the hallway, please? Thank you. The floor is yours. Please state your name and that.
I'm Tyler Westfield with Elliott Architects, the architect of record on Neo Electrical Facility. This is a new facility for Neo Electrical Solutions, who's currently in the business park and moving their Hudson facility to this property north of the business park between 35 and Old 35. It's going to be a 13,800 square foot office and warehouse. Neo Electrical is a electrical contractor. The building will be primarily precast walls with some accent metal panel, curtain wall, storefront system for some glass. The office portion is about 6,300 square feet. The warehouse is approximately 7,500 square feet. We have a lot of parking.
Good thing you point that out.
You're gonna operate a shuttle?
Yeah.
You want to rent some space?
Yeah. We added some
rent some
more to it.
parking.
Yeah.
Yep.
We will shuttle from our facility, I believe. The owner's here. He can comment on that.
So this one's pretty straightforward.
Yep.
We did have a couple comments on some additional parking that they'll have to provide if they do the expansion. But again, for concept plans, it's pretty detailed, and I offered for its approval, recommend approval.
Move to approve.
Second.
With the staff recommendations noted on the report.
Yep. Correct.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Aye. All opposed? Motion carries. What do you do?
What's that?
What's the company do?
They're an electrical contractor.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much.
I like an audience.
I like to have Brian sit as long as possible.
Yeah. Brian needed the billable hours.
Discussion possible action on an application for a zoning map amendment from R1, one-family residential to B2, general business at 690 Darnold Drive, Hudson GNG LLC.
We talked about previously when we requested that the council set a public hearing date. This is the first action in that rezoning process. We annexed the property in and it never completed the process, whereas it would match the zoning in the rest of the neighborhood. So it's just matching everything around it. And Hudson GNG or GNG is Hudson Gymnastics that owns a lot out there.
Can we take both of these together, or do they have to be done?
I
individually?
would hope. Can we do it? I'd like to do it separately if possible.
Okay.
So they're adding mini golf?
We haven't gotten to development plans yet.
Oh, but I mean, it's just noted here,
Yep.
new construction of a gymnastics facility and mini golf.
Yeah, that's one of the uses with that building that they're considering.
I shall move to approve with any conditions, if they exist.
Is there a second?
Sure.
Second. Any further discussion?
Was there a need to have, was there a public hearing on it?
There will be at council. So conditional use permits, public hearings are with plan commission, rezonings are with council.
Any further discussion?
Yeah.
Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. F, discussion possible action on application for a zoning map amendment from R1 on one-family residential B2, general business at 674 Darnold Drive, 685 Darnold Drive, and St. Croix tax parcel 236-2038-00040, outlot 2, SSHD Inc.
Effectively the same thing, just for the remaining property.
Sure, I'll move.
Is there a second?
Yeah.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Aye. All opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Unfinished business 4, discussion possible action.
no.
One more.
G, discussion possible action on an application for zoning map amendment from PUP, public to R2, two-family residential, and a comprehensive plan amendment from public to single and two-family residential at 815 Fifth Street, City of Hudson.
This is the old utility building that they're looking to sell, offer up for sale, and they're requesting rezoning for the same zoning district that's on the rest of the block outside of one parcel that's office.
And to zone it
R2.
family?
1 and 2 family residential.
One or
Yep,
two.
which is, if you look at that map, it matches the zoning on that entire block.
I live on the next block.
Yep.
How are they planning on disposing of that? Is that going to be an auction? Is that the way you usually get rid of it?
They'll offer it for sale. I think they're just gonna put it up for sale, and
I've had somebody approach me, and there's interest in the
There
building
is.
as is.
we've had a number of calls.
Me also.
Yeah.
Had a number of calls on that one
They
already.
want to take the building as it is?
Yep. Yep.
Well, I think the utility department will they'll do an appraisal on it and then determine what's worth the most and whether the building's there or if it's not. And
Yeah, they want to reuse that building.
For what? So is there any concern with soil or contamination or any?
I had brought that up.
They're going to go through their due diligence. Yes, they'll do that. The utility will have to.
So at this point, this is just changing it from public to 2 or 1. Well, it says 2-family here. But you mentioned 1 or 2 family.
Yep.
So it's 2-family.
Yep.
Not 1 or 2, but 2.
2-family residential, yes, thank you.
What's the size of it?
It's about a lot and a half.
Okay.
It's pretty good sized, yeah.
I was just curious. Okay.
It's deep too, it's all the way back.
You'd have a tough time putting 2 single families, but 1 2-family would fit in there quite well.
Yeah, nice duplex or something.
Make a house out of that building?
Move to approve then?
And I'll second.
What's the stipulation?
And I'll second.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Motion carries. Now number 4, unfinished business, discussion possible action on amendment to Municipal Code Chapter 202, signs 202-7 for the purpose of garage, yard sale signage, and other temporary signage.
I would make a motion to carry this over or table this one until we can have a concentrated time of discussion and not after.
Well, and I know that other people want to be here for that too. And,
I do too.
I want to, and I still have to have a chance to go over it with Catherine. So
I'm not sure, garage and yard, I thought we were talking about real estate.
correct.
It's not in there.
The example that
Is in real estate.
specifically for real estate, I know previously we had talked about garage and
sale.
yard, but if we don't want to pursue, if we only want to stick to just real estate.
My original request was
Yeah, it was
strictly,
just
yeah. But we can bring it into the conversation, but I don't want to convolute.
And then I think that conversation needs to be also possibly some updates elsewhere in our zoning ordinance, just for consistency purposes. It might be worthwhile to have I don't want to call it a workshop, but a workshop just to, not to complicate this particular item in front of us, but we've got quite a bit that we got to clean up.
So just for clarity purposes, so are we saying we're going to have one discussion on residential signs and then a separate discussion on yard and, or on garage sale signs, or are we having one conversation?
My original request was just for the real estate signs.
Okay.
I don't know how the garage and everything else fell into it.
But I mean, I think the garage and the other are still issues.
Yeah, I think the issue is if you allow one sort of temporary signage and don't allow another, what are...
I'm all for consistency on the
Right.
zoning or signage.
I move to adjourn.
Is there anything for future items?
I'm sorry.
Well, so I mean, I think we just need to, if we're moving to.
Signage.
to-
For the future.
Sorry?
Do you want the signage on the future agenda?
Yes, but I just want it to be so it's,
A separate item, so we
a
have
separate
time.
item.
Yeah.
So we have time for discussion, maybe not at the end of the meeting, but if we have other issues, I know they're not going to want to sit through it, but just so we can have a concentrated conversation about it.
Yep. There's a lot. Obviously, they started moving dirt at the dog track 2 weeks ago, so that's going to really start coming fast and furious here in the next few months. I also, just want to at least acknowledge John Hoggett's contributions to the city.
Yeah.
Yeah. Terrible.
Yep, a big loss to the city. So that being said, we'll have a couple other rezoning applications we just got in today. So again, it's a lot, and we'll have a planner hopefully hired by June.
Good.
Rezoning downtown or elsewhere?
One is downtown.
TIF district.
That'll be coming forward too, and one is halfway.
Halfway to what?
Halfway downtown, halfway up on the hill.
Rezoning District 5? What was that? I guess I missed that question.
No, he was asking if the zoning was
I was
downtown.
asking if the zoning was
Oh,
downtown.
I'm sorry. And you said it's District 5?
No, I said it's partially. I mean, there's one that's downtown and there's one that's
Halfway.
One's next to your
halfway.
District 5 on your mind.
That's not downtown.
Now I will make my motion again.
I will
move to
recognize your
adjourn.
motion at this point.
And I will continue to second it.
All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Thank you, folks.
I mean, it almost may be a separate